What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpalia sitting on the couch making some money investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. Today we're looking at Mogul's latest listing, the Turner. This is a 8-bedroom, 7-bathroom pad split, new renovation built as a pad split in Decatur, Georgia. I actually already have 2 Mogul pad splits in Georgia. I'm going to share a little bit of info on that. It's an interesting one. Year 1 projected yield 7.94%, so a little bit lower than we've seen recently for some of the pad splits. Average yield and levered IRR are both projected at 12%, or 12.1, 12.2 respectively. Their year 1 underwritten top line revenue is $63,000. I'm going to dig into that number a little bit later. They're saying, okay, it's 1,957 square feet or something, 1959 square feet of living space, but there's an additional 1,100 square feet of finished basement space that's made up of 4 en-suites. This is, I'm going to look at the floor plan with you guys and look at the public records. It's really hard to figure out how this home is configured based on the information they've given us. Based on looking at the public records, looking at the pictures that I've been able to find of it. And so if anybody has any more insight into that, I'm going to, ask for your help because I have no idea. Total offering amount, $198,000. And, let's see how much has sold out so far. Oh, let me see. Oh, so far, about 67,000, 66,000 has sold. Moving kind of quickly, but not too bad. So looking at the 2 that I already own in Decatur, Georgia, I own the Mafee, just a little bit of it. This is a 7-bedroom, 2-bathroom, so similar bedrooms, far less bathrooms. We only paid $300,000 for this one, versus the price that we're paying on this current listing is $400,000, but we are getting an additional bedroom and several more en-suites. But so, it's a huge jump up in price, right? $100,000 more. So 1/3 more than we paid on this one. This one's done incredibly well for me, though, by the end of last year. So they sort of reset annualized income for the new year. But last year, 9.4%. That was, not a full year of operations, but it did very well for me. So far this year, starting off even stronger. So, pad splits in Decatur look like they're doing pretty good so far. The other one I have a small piece of is the Andres. This is 8 bedrooms, 2 baths, so same number of bedrooms, quite a few less bathrooms. I believe this one might have had one of these 2, and I'm not sure which one it is, had some basement space that they were including that didn't show up on the public records. I'm fairly certain. So this is something, or that doesn't show up in the listing square footage. This is where I first ran into this with them. And I think it's just that it's a different market. They treat it differently than we would do it here. But yeah, so for these 8 bedrooms a year ago, we paid $315,000, right? So again, $85,000 less. Now, only, all of those were shared bathrooms, no en-suites. But this property, again, has performed incredibly well, right? 10% across the board last year. So far this year, doing even better. So I like the idea of buying pad splits in this market. I don't know that I like the price point, which is what I think is driving down the yield on here, right? But I think, part of it is it's brand new renovation. It's 5 more bedrooms than we have on those other 2. So I can see this. I can see reasons why I'd want to pay more for this one than we did for the other 2. You know what I didn't do, and I keep forgetting to do this before. You guys know. You know the thing. I keep forgetting to do this before I get this open. It's the Zillow home price trends for some of these. In that zip code, seems we did buy 2 last year in that zip code. Okay, prices have gone down considerably in that market, right? 12% over the last 12 months. The forecast is to continue moving down. So we are paying significantly more than we paid last year in a market where, in a zip code where, I don't know that those other two are actually in the same zip code. So that's a good question. They may not be. I have to open up the listings, but that'd be something you could dig into further if you wanted to. Like I said, I've been trying to keep these a little bit shorter. I'm not too successful with that. Let's get some of the easy stuff out of the way. FEMA flood map. It looks good. You can see there's a AE flood zone, then the regulatory floodway, and we've got a shaded X, and it looks like the home itself is not in the flood zone based on this picture. But it does look like part of the property is. I think, like when I looked at the property lines, if you zoom out here and you look at like where this actually is, I think you're getting this flood zone running through the back of the property, but not touching this property or not touching the building. That's what it looks like. Does this one have the? Yeah, we don't have. Yeah, why don't they put the flood ones on there? They should. But anyway, it looks like the floodplain is on the property itself, but not touching the home. This tends to worry me a little bit when we have so much of our space below grade. Oftentimes basements in certain areas don't become finished basements because you have water issues, right? And so, where this is a newly finished basement in a property, it's something that if I'm buying this for myself, especially if I was buying the whole property, it's something I'd really dig into, right? I'd want to figure out what's the actual height of the floodplain, and where does that stack up against the bottom floor of my basement. And so there's no pictures in Mogul's listing of the outside of this home, but I found some in the previous listing. So this is the back side of the home. You can see it looks like a 2-story home from the back, where the front looks like it's just 1 story. So this is, what I would normally think of as a walkout basement in the back. It looks like, but then, okay, this is why I'm getting confused. So this is the basement. Looks like this is the back door. I think that's this, right? I think this is the back door showing in the basement. I'm not positive. This floor seems a little higher than this. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just my perspective. But this is the floor plan, and they have 3 floors shown on the floor plan, right? They've got the main level, they have upstairs, and they have bedrooms. And they have the basement. Main level, upstairs, basement. Well, this is the back side of the house. I can see, you can see 2 levels of windows. So I don't understand where this 3rd level is coming from. I mean, from the front, it looks like it's just 1, right? And then we get to the back, and it seems like it's 2. But I don't see the 3rd one, right? Because if you had a basement below this grade, you'd have 0 egress, and I can't imagine you have a whole floor with 4 bedrooms with en-suites with not a single egress window. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So understanding how this property is cut up is pretty tough. I don't know. I just don't know what's going on by looking at the exterior pictures. So if anybody has insight into this, right, what's happening here, how do we have 3 floors? How do we have 3 floors when I look at, the back side of the building? And it looks like, okay, I've got, what's I don't get it. Because I need egress windows. I can't have bedrooms without some form of egress. And it doesn't, so I don't know. Maybe this is, again, clearly where I'm missing something. These look lower. This is obviously 1 story here, another one here. Is that so tall that there's 2? I don't think so. So it's really hard for me to understand what's going on there. But they've clearly shared 3 floors. One of the things that I thought could be going on is that you really just have these 2 are on the same floor, and only, there's only partial basement, and that could be because this is twice as deep or something like that. So you really have 2 stories or twice as long. I mean, I just really don't know. It drives me crazy whenever there's a property listing and I can't figure out what physically is going on. I really think best practice for all of these fractional real estate platforms should be to have a Matterport, floor plan. And in addition to that, just a video walkthrough of, going through the home, because I just can't even figure out what's going on here. Now, this listing was for 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,959 square feet. And this just sold, let's see where, in March of this year, right? So if it sold 5 days ago, wait, is that right? March 11th. No. Why did I say 5 days ago? I think I was thinking March 26th. Anyway, so just a couple weeks ago, for $222,500, but this is saying it's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,959 square feet. Also in this description, it clearly says, unfinished basement, needs HVAC, and what was the other thing? And full electrical update needed. So hopefully those things are being done, but we don't know those things are being done, right? This is another scenario where somebody bought this home, they're flipping it. Let me close this now so I don't keep opening that one back up, and this too. They're flipping it to us, and we just don't have all the details, okay? We know it's under construction. We know what the 3 floors are supposed to look like. I can't figure out how it is 3 floors, but we've got those floors, I mean, are they going to pop up the roof? Like, sometimes you'll see people do that, right? Like, build up into the attic, raise the roof. I just have no idea what's going on. I think they would tell us if that were the case, because this already says 1,959 square feet, which is matches up with the listing. Let me close this flood map. You know what? Let's go ahead and just look at the crime map now, because this will be quick. This is just the spot crime map. You can see this it goes back to the 13th of last month, so like 3 weeks almost. And they had to zoom out really far to get enough crimes to fill the map. But, in the last 3 weeks, it does look like there was 1 assault relatively close. This is much better than a lot of the crime maps that we've seen. Seems I can see it here. I did want to point out we're not super close to the bus stop. It seems like this is going to be more of a property where you're going to have people that are going to drive. They mentioned they added a parking pad. When I look here, it looks like there's a driveway down the side. So I don't know where the parking pad is. Maybe they added something here. I have no idea what this is spray painted here. It just says all. I'm super curious what that's all about. But you can see, okay, you could have a couple of cars street parked. You could have, I don't know what this pad looks like, but I'm assuming they've added some parking here. So that was going to be an issue. But it's in a market where, a lot of Atlanta, the bus lines and the public transit seems to work perfectly fine for our pad splits. But this particular one is just not very close. Like when we click on the transit map. Yeah, I mean, these are the closest ones. What is that? 15 minute walk to get to those. That's a little on the far side, right? So I think we're going to primarily have people that have cars here. And so are we going to fit 8 cars? Well, you can really only, it depends on what they did as far as adding parking, right? But it is, and there is street parking. There's a fire hydrant there, so you're going to end up with problems parking in the road. But, it does look like it's not a very congested road, right? But if we end up being the one that has all the cars on it, one of the things, that Padsplit likes to talk about is being a good neighbor, right? And if we are the only property in the neighborhood that just has a ton of cars flooding the street now, where they're not used to that, that's not going to be great as far as from a complaint standpoint. And I was trying to look at, like, okay, from these pictures, can I figure out where there's 3 floors? And there's just no way. It looks like. So I don't know. And you guys know when there's a big question like this that I can't answer, it's enough for me to not want to buy this. Even if there's a lot of other things that I like about it, right? Like, okay, the crime map looked fine. The flood map looked okay, except again, I don't know. And that's what kind of got me off on this discussion about the different floors is, obviously it's a steep drop off. Where in this backyard are we running into, where's the actual flood zone line stop? And, it does look like it's probably further back here just looking at the grade, but it's something that like I said, I would be slightly concerned about. It definitely, if I were buying the whole property, I'd want to know, because I would want to know if I'm going to have to deal with water in the backyard sometimes. Is that a place where we don't have good drainage and whatnot? But I think it's relatively minor. Okay, so what about valuation? Well, okay, it's selling at $222. Zillow, or 222.5, is that what it is? Yeah. Zillow doesn't have his estimate. Realtor, I think, did actually give me an estimate. Or, you can see on Realtor, before it was listed, it was 335 or 292, 321, 335. So all the estimates in January were in the threes at least. And this was assuming it's just a 1,900 square foot property, right? These all dropped down when it was listed, is what I think happened. Redfin says 240, but again, they know it just sold, right? And one of and it sold without a finished basement, so they're accounting. So we have 1,100 square foot basement that was finished, that came with 4 bathrooms down there and 4 bedrooms. Plus they added a bathroom, at least another bathroom, right? 4 or 5. Yeah, they added 5 bathrooms. Or they're planning to add 5 bathrooms, right? This construction's probably not even done yet. But other than that, the property was already renovated, right? So it's another situation where I think that, if we were to buy this and then have to do the renovation, yes, I think obviously whoever's flipping it to us is making some money doing that. Would I rather see Mogul do it? I'm just not sure, right? Like, obviously, I'd like to capture the upside there. At the same time, Mogul's just not in the business of flipping properties, right? And so I'm on here to buy long-term investments, not necessarily flips. And so, I don't know. It's a tough one. Value-wise, we paid $300 for one of the 7-bedroom Padsplit we bought last year. We paid $315 for the 8-bedroom one. Neither of those had as many bathrooms. It does seem more like we're paying a pretty big premium when you consider that, okay, housing prices declined 12% over the last year as well, right? So valuation feels like we're paying up a little bit on this one. I did look at, in the public records. It's funny they say the effective year of the property is 2012. It actually built in 1968. I think when they do these effective years, they're basically saying, because of the level of renovation, it's as if it were only built, 14 years ago. But this is kind of weird. So it shows 528 square feet of finished basement living area here. But when you look down here and they say, okay, we've got 1,431 square feet is the size of the home. So we're missing about 528 square feet there. Is the garage, is the garage finished as living space? Are they counting that open porch now? Because that's not an open porch anymore, right? If we look at the pictures, let's go back to these pictures. It looks like this is now a closed-in porch. So did they add this as additional living square footage? if they did, it's tough to understand where that fits into any of these floor plans, though. So I don't know that they did. But this isn't, sometimes we can look at these records and say, okay, very clearly they just added the garage into the living square footage, or they did something. But yeah, this says we had, or maybe this is what they're doing. Actually, I think this is it. So they're saying, okay, regular living area plus 528 square feet of finished basement living, right? Those two things actually add up to the number. 1431 plus 528. Oh, wait, what did we do there? I just multiplied 1431 plus 528. Okay, yeah, that gets us the 1959 square footage. So they are already assuming 528 square feet of finished basement and 1431 of the home, but then it's saying there's another 1,173 square feet under the dwelling. So I don't know. I mean, this is it's extremely confusing. Maybe it really is 3 floors. I don't understand where the egress is, if that's the case. Maybe the back side of this home is lower than the front, and so then there's just no windows up there. I don't know. It drives me crazy when I don't know, though. Like I don't want to buy this and not understand what I'm buying. I also think, okay, if that 1,900 square feet was already including 500 square feet of finished basement, which it looks like it is, right? Because it's the 1959 is exactly this plus this. Where's this extra 1,100 coming from? That's super interesting. Yeah, because this is 1431 plus the basement already. But this is 3 times this. Yeah. So anyway, I'd love a Matterport of this, a video walkthrough, something that really shows me what are we getting physically, because I don't understand where 3 floors come from. Okay, I think I've said that enough times. Sorry about that. The other thing that I'm uncomfortable with is one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is we haven't seen we did actually on this one. So this is one of the first times we've seen the interest rate move up again. We hadn't really seen it move very much. I think this is a reflection of how our rates are moving up higher. So I want to shut off the refinance, though, and see how that affects our returns. Drops it down to 11.2 and 10.9. So it is actually doing a decent amount on the IRR side, right? Let's turn that back on, and I think that was 12.2. Yeah. So, I mean, we're losing over a full point of IRR if we don't get that refinance. And what is the refinance? It is, what are they assuming here? 5%. 6 months ago, it seemed like a no-brainer that we were going to get to 5% rates sometime in the next 5 years. Today, that seems a lot less certain, right? And that's one of the reasons why I've never really liked to assume that we're going to be able to refinance at a lower rate, because even though it seems perfectly possible, we had rates going at a great trajectory moving down, and all of a sudden in the last couple of weeks they've shot up 0.5%. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty around that. If we really need that refinance to get our numbers to 12%, 12% is already not an extremely exciting IRR for me. If we need the refinance to get there and we drop below 11, right? It was 10.9. That's kind of disappointing, right? And then, okay, the other thing that I wanted to really look at is their top line revenue. They're saying year one they're estimating 63,900. I'm using the Padsplit calculator. I put in their address. I put in the number. The 6 bedrooms have en suites and 2 don't. And it's giving me the 65,000 gross effective income. But remember, I think Padsplit's top line revenue is after taking out, it's almost 10,000 in fees, right? So that would get us to where, a conservative estimate for me here would be $55,000, right? Not $64,000. Oh, you know what though? And so what is $55,000? 55,000 divided by 12. And that gets us to $4,500 per month. And so I want to go back to, see, this is where, now that we start to have a portfolio of properties with them, and we can see, okay, this is my other 8-bedroom one. And, okay, so I can see what they're doing here, because they're doing better than that with this other one in this market. Okay, but September, August, July, we had 3 months that were worse. Wish they would give us an aggregate number too. I like getting this per month, but it would be nice to have just an aggregate, like 2025 number or trailing 12 number, so I didn't have to add those up. But I guess one of the things that I could do is add those all up, divide that by 12, or divide it by the number, and figure out what the average is. But it does look like it's probably higher than this 4,500. And there's many more en-suites. I guess just basically what they're doing is looking at what they already have and saying, look, we should be able to at least do as well as those. One thing though that is tough, and I was talking to somebody who operates a number of these, and his ramp up time is not like there's a lot of uncertainty that first year, a lot of turnover in trying to fill those rooms. And even though Padsplit will often be able to get you up to like 80% occupancy in the first, they'll tell you they'll do that really quickly. But you end up, a lot of the people that you get that move in the first year seem to have more turnover early in your ownership of these, and then you start to get to some people that stay longer and longer. And so your average stay tends to be shorter in the beginning. I don't know, this is just something that he's telling me anecdotally. I don't have any data on that. But so to predict that our first year is going to be one more than what the Padsplit, tool is showing, I get nervous about that. But it is below, or it is it's in line with what their other two properties are. But the other two properties are mature properties, even though they don't have the same number of bathrooms. The other thing that I've talked about quite a bit is I start to worry as we add more and more units in the same markets. How much are they going to absorb? Are we going to just cannibalize our own inventory a little bit? Like, for example, this property, if we built it nicer and we have more en-suites, like, are people going to want to move from our old property to this one just because this is a better one? Maybe, right? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but these are just things that I'm concerned about. So for me, I'm going to pass on this one. The main reason being, I just don't understand what's happening with the physical, where are these 3 floors coming from when I only see 2 rows of windows? Do we have a full basement that has 0 egress? That seems extremely unlikely to me. But how do we have 3 floors? Where, when I'm looking at the pictures, I just can't get there. I can't figure out. And for me, my confused mind always says no to an investment. I want to understand what's going on if I'm going to buy something. But also, too, I feel like we're paying up quite a bit relative to the 2 properties we bought last year, especially as prices have declined in that market. They haven't increased. And we're paying a higher interest rate. All these reasons make it less attractive, even though the property itself, I think, is a little bit better. And both of those, just keep in mind, both of those properties, we bought existing Padsplits, right? We weren't doing this business model where we're buying a new flip and then running it. So, the last thing I wanted to mention too, we do have the appraisal contingency in here, and I think it does feel like we're overpaying a bit, but it doesn't feel. It just depends. It depends on what the real square footage situation is. if it's really 1,431 square feet plus a full finished basement, that's not the same thing as what it looked like before, right? It looked like we had the 1959 plus another 1,100 square feet, but here it looks like the 1959 already includes the basement. So I guess I don't even have a good guess on does that valuation make sense or not, other than just comparing, okay, we're spending $400,000 for 8 bedrooms versus $315,000 we spent last year for 8 bedrooms. But, 5 less bathrooms is the one we bought last year. Are 5 bathrooms worth $85,000? Probably not. That's kind of an interesting question. I mean, you could clearly spend that much to make 5 bathrooms, or you could spend a decent amount less than that, depending on what they end up looking like, how the level of finishes and whatnot. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to pass on this one. If anybody, if you have any additional insight into what is going on physically with the property, I'd love to hear about it. If you have other concerns that I didn't mention, I'd love to hear those. And if you're going to buy it and you have reasons, to think that this is going to do so much better than the other 2 that we paid less for, I'd like to hear about that too. Anyway, that's it for me for today. Until next time, I'm just going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.